This surveillance video from 2004 shows the last time Carlie was ever seen alive. The man in the video, Joseph Smith, was convicted of kidnapping, raping, and killing Carlie.
On the evening of February 1st, 2004, most of America was focused on a game. Living rooms across the country were filled with the glow of television screens. Families gathered around coffee tables stacked with snacks. Nearly 90 million viewers watched as the New England Patriots defeated the Carolina Panthers 32-29. The halftime performance featuring Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson would dominate headlines the next morning. But in Sarasota, Florida, while cheers echoed from homes and sports bars, a very different kind of night was unfolding. On a stretch of Bridge Road, not far from residential neighborhoods and small local businesses, an 11-year-old girl disappeared. By the time the country was debating football plays and halftime controversy, law enforcement officers in Sarasota were already piecing together what would become one of the most disturbing child abduction cases in the state's history.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, Steve. Around 6 o'clock.
Her name was Carlie Brucia. Carlie Brucia was born on March 16, 1992, on Long Island, New York, to her parents, Joseph Brucia and Susan Schindler. After her parents divorced when she was still very young, Susan relocated with Carlie to Sarasota, Florida. Despite the move, Carlie maintained close ties to her family in New York and regularly visited during school breaks. In Sarasota, Carlie grew up in a blended household. Susan later remarried Stephen Schindler, and together they had a son. Friends, teachers, and neighbors consistently described Carlie as energetic, affectionate, and socially fearless. She hugged classmates. She loved music. She enjoyed going to the mall with friends and had a particular admiration for pop stars like Jennifer Lopez. At McIntosh Middle School, where she was a 6th grade student, faculty members remembered her as bright and kind, the kind of child who filled space with presence. Sunday, February 1st, 2004, began like an ordinary weekend day. Carlie had spent time at a friend's house in the neighborhood. That afternoon, she planned to return home to watch the Super Bowl with her family. The distance between the friend's home and her own was roughly 1 mile. At approximately 6:15 p.m., Carlie left the house. The friend's mother, cautious about the busy roadway nearby, contacted Susan to confirm that Carlie had permission to walk home alone. Susan said she did not want her daughter walking along Bridge Road and had not approved that plan. Stephen Schindler immediately got into his vehicle to pick her up. He drove the route between the houses. He didn't see her. He drove it again. Still nothing. The streets were unusually quiet for that time of day. Most residents were indoors watching the game. Within an hour, panic had replaced confusion. Carlie had not arrived home. She had not called. She had vanished somewhere between 2 familiar locations in her own neighborhood. Shortly after 7 p.m., Carlie Brucia was reported missing to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. Deputies responded quickly. Officers began canvassing the area, knocking on doors, speaking to neighbors, retracing the likely path Carlie would have taken. They interviewed the friend she had been visiting and her family. They learned that Carlie had seemed eager to get home. There had been tension the day before between Susan and Stephen, and Carlie reportedly wanted to be home with her mother. By early morning, the search had expanded. Patrol units continued working through the night. When Carlie failed to appear at school the next day, investigators escalated the case. Bloodhounds were brought in. Using a pillowcase from Carlie's bed to establish scent, one of the dogs traced her path toward the area behind a car wash on Bridge Road. E's Car Wash, located at 4715 South Tamiami Trail near the bridge corridor. The scent abruptly stopped there. That location immediately became a focal point. Investigators contacted the car wash owner, Mike Evanoff, who informed them that the business was equipped with motion-activated surveillance cameras. Deputies began reviewing the footage. One camera showed the front parking area. Nothing unusual. Another angle captured the roadway. Traffic moved normally. Then they accessed footage from a rear camera. At 6:21 p.m., just minutes after Carlie had left her friend's house, the camera recorded a young girl wearing a red shirt, blue jeans, and carrying a pink backpack walking through the lot. It was Carlie. Moments later, a man entered the frame. He appeared to be wearing a mechanic-style uniform shirt with a name patch. He approached her. They spoke briefly. Then he grabbed her arm and led her away, out of camera view. The clip lasted only seconds, but it transformed the investigation instantly. This was no longer a missing child case. It was a recorded abduction. The footage was clear enough to establish physical details. The man was described as approximately 5 feet 8 inches tall, with dark hair, a stocky build, and what appeared to be a tattoo on his arm. The uniform suggested employment in an automotive or mechanical field. The search widened. Investigators interviewed Stephen Schindler again. He told deputies that while driving along Bridge Road looking for Carlie, he noticed a red pickup truck moving back and forth in the area. He also recalled seeing a similar truck near the friend's home earlier that evening. That lead was pursued. The owner of the truck was identified and brought in for questioning.
Carlie spent the night Saturday?
Yes.
Anything?
Sunday morning, I woke up. I don't know, nothing happened Saturday night. Okay. You know, they were giddying all night long. You know, I was sleeping in the other room. So I woke up Sunday morning, like I normally do, get up, get ready for work.
So if you didn't see her at any point after...
During the day?
During the day, or if you went to work?
Absolutely not.
Is that what you wore to work Sunday, or did you...
No, actually, I had a Super Bowl shirt on yesterday.
Is that?
I have the slightest idea, so definitely not me. It does look like me, doesn't it, though?
Yeah, it kind of looks like you. That's why we're talking to you.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely would not be me there. To be honest.
The deputies that you spoke to that night think that that's you.
It's not me. Blow it up. Do what you got to do. You verify my time where I was. You know, I'm more than glad to work for you guys than anything. Believe me, there is no way. I mean, that was me. Honest to God, no way at all. I would never put anybody through that. No way.
How do we get past that, though? That's
verifying where I was at 6:21.
Employment records confirmed he had been at work at the time of the abduction. His vehicle was searched. No evidence connected him to the crime. He was cleared. Meanwhile, investigators returned to the surveillance footage again, analyzing it frame by frame. That review revealed another detail. Approximately 3 minutes before Carlie entered the lot, a pale yellow 1992 Buick Century station wagon had pulled into the parking area. It then exited, slowed near the road, and re-entered. The timing was significant. Law enforcement released still images from the footage to the public. Within hours, tips flooded in, more than 800 in total. Several callers independently identified the man in the video as Joseph Peter Smith, a 37-year-old Sarasota resident originally from Brooklyn, New York. A woman who had previously worked with Smith at an automotive repair shop contacted authorities after recognizing his walk, posture, and appearance in the footage. Detective Vincent Reaver and additional officers responded to the address associated with Smith. They learned he was on probation and had prior violations. With assistance from his probation officer, and after coordination at the residence, Joseph Smith came outside to speak with deputies. Smith had an extensive criminal history dating back to the early 1990s, including arrests for drug offenses and prior allegations involving kidnapping and false imprisonment. Though he had been acquitted in that earlier case, just days after a recent release from custody, he had again been arrested for drug-related charges. Given the identification from multiple independent sources, Smith was taken in for questioning. The man captured on camera leading Carlie Brucia away was now in custody. But for Carlie's family, and for Sarasota, the most important question remained unanswered. Where was she? Joseph Patrick Smith drove a brown Lincoln Town Car. That detail mattered, because the vehicle captured near the car wash on Bee Ridge Road was not a Lincoln. It was a pale yellow 1992 Buick Century station wagon. While investigators worked to trace the Buick's owner, 2 detectives continued questioning Smith. They asked him where he had been on February 1, 2004, Had he been anywhere near the car wash that evening? Had he spoken to an 11-year-old girl walking along Bee Ridge Road? Smith denied everything. When officers showed him a still frame from the surveillance video, he looked at it carefully and said the man resembled him, but insisted it was not him. He remained calm, cooperative, almost casual. He allowed officers to search his rented room and his Lincoln without resistance. Inside his room, investigators located a mechanic-style uniform with a stitched name patch. That immediately drew attention. In the surveillance footage, the man approaching Carlie appeared to be wearing a similar work shirt. Still, nothing in the room directly tied him to the crime. Inside the Lincoln, officers found drug paraphernalia. That violation alone was enough to arrest him on probation charges. He was taken into custody. While detectives were still processing the Lincoln, a woman arrived at the residence where Smith rented a room. Her name was Naomi. She pulled into the driveway in a yellow Buick Century station wagon. The same make and color as the vehicle seen on the surveillance footage. Officers immediately began asking questions. Naomi initially told investigators that around 6:30 p.m. on February 1st, Smith had been on the phone with his estranged wife. If accurate, that would place him away from the abduction site at the critical moment. For a brief time, investigators were forced to consider the possibility that once again, they were facing another dead end. But the situation shifted just hours later. Naomi's husband, Jeff, came forward. He was the primary driver of the Buick, and according to him, Naomi had been mistaken. Jeff told detectives that when he woke up early the next morning, the Buick was not in the driveway. It was gone. Around 7:30 a.m., Smith returned with it. Jeff described Smith's demeanor that morning as unusual. Calm, almost energized. Not tired, not stressed. Clean, composed. Inside the Buick, Jeff noticed subtle changes. Items had been moved. The rear seat had been folded down. That detail immediately raised alarm. Jeff voluntarily turned the vehicle over to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office for forensic processing.
I came out and said, hey, can I use your car? I said, well, just go. How are you going to be for 15 minutes? So I said, all right, go ahead. What was you wearing at the time? His mechanic suit. Gray. Yellow. When I got up at 6:30, no car. 7:30, I'm ready to get walk out the door. Who shows up? Joe. Where the hell have you been?
What do you look like 7:30 Monday morning?
Real clean. Like, he had a good night's sleep, or he's real happy, or like he just looked like he had a wonderful night. It was just the way he acted, from what I know, was just very strange. And then I see the stuff on the news. You know something? I guess there was a dark side I just never saw.
At that point, Smith's earlier denial about being near the car wash began to unravel. He was read his Miranda rights again. This time, he invoked his right to counsel. Meanwhile, another crucial development occurred.
We gotta sit down and we have to talk. This room is not the truth. It's the most important thing that goes on in this room is the truth.
I was already advised to talk to a lawyer.
Who advised you?
Okay, friend of mine.
That means you and I can't.
On the evening of February 4th, Smith's brother John arrived at the police station. He explained that he and Joseph had a strained relationship, but something had disturbed him deeply. On the night of February 1st, around 8:00 p.m., Joseph had called him. They did not speak the following day. Then, while watching the news coverage of the car wash footage, John saw the image of the man approaching Carlie. He immediately recognized him. So did his girlfriend. It was not just the face. It was the walk. Years earlier, Joseph had undergone back surgery. His gait had changed permanently. The posture, the stride, it was distinctive. Later that same night, Joseph showed up at John's house. He appeared unsettled, possibly under the influence. John refused to let him inside, partly because Joseph had previously behaved inappropriately around his girlfriend's teenage daughter. John noticed something else. Joseph was wearing his mechanic uniform, but not his usual sneakers. He was wearing boots John had never seen before. Joseph said only one thing. "Do you want to talk about something?" John refused and shut the door. The following day at work, Joseph's behavior grew stranger. He repeatedly washed his hands, despite them already being clean. He told his employer he might need to leave the state unexpectedly. John told investigators he had no direct proof, but the resemblance to the man in the video was undeniable. Detectives intensified efforts to enhance the surveillance footage. They sought assistance from specialists to clarify the name patch on the uniform. The enhancement revealed a simple word stitched onto the shirt: Joe. The forensic examination of the Buick began producing results. Hairs consistent with Carlie's were found inside the vehicle. Fibers recovered from the interior matched fibers from Carlie's red shirt. The evidence was beginning to form a clear pattern. Then the case took a dramatic turn. Joseph requested to speak privately with his brother and mother at the station. After the meeting, John emerged and told investigators that Joseph had come close to saying something incriminating, but had stopped short. Later that evening, John called the FBI, confused and agitated. He believed his phone had been tapped. It had not. Investigators realized something critical. Joseph must have said something to John after leaving the station. Officers immediately returned to John's home. This time, John told them the truth. Joseph had admitted involvement. Not in clear, explicit words, but enough. Enough that John believed his brother knew exactly where Carlie was. John provided directions to a location off Proctor Road, near Interstate 75. Shortly after 1 a.m., in a wooded area behind the Central Church of Christ, law enforcement discovered Carlie Brucia. She was found partially unclothed. A ligature mark was visible around her neck. The search that had consumed Sarasota for 3 days was over. Joseph Smith was formally charged with kidnapping, sexual battery, and first-degree murder. Forensic testing confirmed the presence of his DNA on Carlie's clothing. The statistical probability of a random match was effectively non-existent. The evidence was overwhelming. Carlie Brucia's death sent shockwaves through Florida. Parents who had once allowed children to walk short distances alone now refused to let them out of sight. The surveillance video of her abduction became one of the most widely broadcast crime clips in American history. In 2005, Smith pleaded guilty. A jury recommended the death penalty. He was sentenced to death for first-degree murder, along with additional life sentences for kidnapping and sexual battery. The case also prompted legislative reform. Florida enacted stricter probation monitoring laws, later known as the Carlie Brucia Act, in response to the fact that Smith had violated probation multiple times prior to the crime. Carlie Brucia was 11 years old. Her life was full of plans, music, friendships, and small everyday moments that should have continued for decades. Instead, her name became a permanent part of Florida's legal history, a reminder of how quickly ordinary life can change and how critical accountability can be when warning signs are ignored. Joseph Smith remains on Florida's death row. Carlie's legacy remains in the reforms that followed, and in the community that refused to let her be forgotten. An FBI agent later clarified a key point raised by the defense. It had not been law enforcement who orchestrated Joseph Smith's conversation with his brother. According to the agent, John was the one who insisted on speaking with Joseph, hoping to get answers himself. The meeting only occurred after Smith's attorneys approved it. Prosecutors maintained that nothing about that exchange violated his rights. Eventually, it was time for trial. The case against Joseph Smith was substantial. The car wash surveillance footage showed him approaching Carlie Brucia and leading her away. Forensic evidence linked fibers and hairs from Carlie to the yellow Buick station wagon he had driven. His DNA was recovered from her clothing. And perhaps most damaging of all, information he provided ultimately led investigators to the exact location where her body was found. For Carlie's family, the proceedings were devastating. Sitting through testimony meant reliving every detail. For the community that had searched for her, it was a painful confirmation of what they had feared from the moment that surveillance video first aired. John Smith, Joseph's brother, testified, but his credibility became an issue. Prosecutor Deborah Reaver asked Judge Andrew Owens to declare him a hostile witness. At the time, John was facing his own legal troubles involving drug possession and armed robbery. He admitted on the stand that he had been under the influence of crack cocaine during parts of the ordeal. The defense seized on that, attempting to undermine his reliability.
Did he say anything about how it ended?
Well, I asked, he wasn't sure.
What do you mean? What did you ask? And try to speak up again. Remember, you've got to try to
I asked if she was dead.
And what did he say?
He said, I don't know, she could be.
Despite those efforts, the physical evidence remained powerful. After deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict for first-degree murder, kidnapping, and sexual battery. During the penalty phase, jurors weighed aggravating and mitigating factors. On December 1st, they voted 10-2 to recommend the death penalty, which under Florida law at the time was sufficient. Joseph asked the judge for mercy, saying he was thinking of his family. On March 15th of the following year, Judge Owens formally imposed the death sentence. In court, he described the surveillance image of Carlie being led away as something permanently etched into the community's memory. He stated that the crime was calculated and that the victim had been particularly vulnerable. He concluded that Smith had forfeited his right to live freely among society. Joseph made a statement accepting responsibility. He said he had been heavily under the influence of drugs and claimed that his memory of the day was blurred. He did not attempt to deny what the evidence had established. Carlie's stepfather, Stephen, later admitted that even after the sentence, the pain did not disappear. He said it did not bring Carlie back, but he felt that her voice had finally been heard. Carlie's mother, Susan, was not present in court when the sentence was announced. At the time, she was dealing with her own legal struggles involving drug-related charges. She later acknowledged that she had turned to substances in an attempt to numb overwhelming grief. Joseph Smith was sent to Florida's death row. Years passed, and appeals followed. For a long time, the conviction and sentence remained intact. But in 2016, the United States Supreme Court ruled that Florida's death penalty sentencing structure was unconstitutional because it did not require a unanimous jury recommendation. That decision triggered a wave of resentencing hearings across the state. Smith's death sentence was eventually vacated. A circuit court ordered a new sentencing hearing, limited to punishment, not guilt. Carlie's father, Joe Brucia, publicly expressed frustration. He argued that the system had already failed once, when Smith violated probation before the crime and was not returned to prison. He believed those earlier decisions had consequences that could never be undone. In 2020, Florida reinstated Smith's death sentence after legislative changes requiring unanimity were implemented. Yet further legal challenges followed, prolonging the case even more. Meanwhile, the site where Carlie was found became a place of reflection. The Central Church of Christ maintained a memorial in her honor. Community members gathered there annually, not only to remember her, but to recommit themselves to protecting children. The tragedy had changed Sarasota permanently. Parents became more vigilant. Law enforcement procedures were scrutinized. Public awareness shifted.
I'm here at the Carlie Brucia Memorial Garden at McIntosh Middle School, a garden dedicated to Carlie. And it's the students today who not only maintain the grounds, but in doing so, keep Carlie's memory alive. The community remembers Carlie Brucia. I, as a parent, can't even imagine losing a child. And for her family, like stepfather Stephen Kanzler, that nightmare is a reality.
She was taken too early. Carlie was just a bright, lovable child, you know. And unfortunately, she never got to be somebody.
Following Carlie's abduction, law enforcement tore through evidence trying to track the 11-year-old. A sense of community spread around the world as everyone hoped Carlie would return home.
We got letters from all over the country. Different countries sent us letters from people in languages we couldn't read. Never thought it would get that big.
On February 5th, the sheriff announced Carlie's body had been found in the brush of a local church.
The body of a beautiful 11-year-old girl, Carlie Brucia, has been found. Joseph Smith is under arrest for the abduction and murder of Carlie.
Immediately afterwards, we had a memorial service on the lawn here that was broadcast live up and down the coast here. And that was significant to me that not just the news media would think it was that important. I mean, we had news media from all over the world contacting us. It showed the community how vulnerable we really are. And we don't like to feel vulnerable. People don't like to feel like their children are that at risk.
But it's what we can learn from a tragedy like this that strengthens a community.
Since everything happened with Carlie, there's been a lot more classes teaching kids to defend themselves, what to look out for. So at least it's opened parents' eyes open to be careful, it could be you.
The Community Foundation of Sarasota partners with county schools offering protection courses for students. Since 2005, its Carlie Brucia Fund for Children has collected grants totaling $23,000 for personal safety courses here on the Sun Coast. Although rumors that Carlie previously knew Joseph Smith surrounded the surveillance video, Smith refuted the idea both to his family and at sentencing. Still, Carlie's case raised questions about the criminal justice system as Smith's criminal history surfaced, including a false imprisonment charge in 1997.
I could be angry at the court system because he should have been in jail for other offenses he had committed where he shouldn't have been able to get to Carlie. But it's not going to solve anything.
As Joseph Smith sits on death row, Steve Kanzler says a life for a life is the only option.
I believe at that time is when I feel like that's when Carlie will be free. Then I can be free also. When I watch him die, then that'll be like the end of the book. And then I know she'll be at peace, and then I can kind of start feeling at peace with myself also.
Joe Brucia channeled his anger into advocacy. He pushed for legislative reform to address probation violations and supervision gaps. Although proposals were introduced, not all efforts became law. Still, Carlie's case became part of broader conversations about child safety and criminal oversight. Then, in July 2021, news broke that Joseph Smith had died at Union Correctional Institution at the age of 55. Reports later indicated he had been suffering from serious illness, including complications related to liver disease. With his death, the decades-long legal battle ended, not with an execution, but with time running out. Smith was never formally charged in the separate 2000 homicide of Tara Riley, although law enforcement had indicated they intended to question him further. Carlie Brucia was 11 years old. Her abduction, captured on surveillance, became one of the most recognized crime images in modern American history. But beyond the video, beyond the court rulings and appeals, she was a daughter, a friend, a student who loved music and laughter. Her name remains associated not only with tragedy, but with awareness, with reforms debated, with communities changed, and with a reminder of how quickly ordinary moments can turn irreversible. And even years later, in Sarasota, there is still a place where flowers appear quietly, where people pause, and where her memory continues to live. The investigation into Tara Riley's death remains officially unsolved. Although Joseph Smith was considered a possible suspect late in his life, he was never formally charged in that case. With his death in 2021, the full truth about whether he was involved in any other crimes may never be known. John Smith later said that one of his greatest regrets was that his brother never fully admitted what he had done. According to John, Joseph accepted responsibility in court in a legal sense, but he never truly explained himself. Not to the family, not to the community, and not even to his own relatives. There was no detailed confession, no full acknowledgement of the harm he caused. For some, that silence felt like one final act of avoidance. Time moved forward, as it always does, but memory is more fragile. In Sarasota, the memorial garden created in Carlie Brucia's honor once drew dozens of volunteers every week. Flowers were planted, candles were lit. The space became a symbol of unity and vigilance. Over the years, however, attendance thinned. The garden fell into neglect and was even vandalized. Family friend Sherry Langworthy, together with her husband and Carlie's cousin, stepped in to restore it. For weeks, they worked to repair the damage, replant flowers, and clean the space. For them, the memorial was not just about remembrance. It was about awareness, a place where parents could bring their children and talk openly about safety, about trust, about paying attention.
This week, we brought you an update about the murder of Carlie Brucia. Now, loved ones are reaching out to us again, pleading for your help to restore this garden that you see right over there, a memorial for the young girl. ABC Action News reporter Wendy Lane shows us what you can do to keep Carlie's memory alive.
It's dying. People are forgetting.
At one time, dozens of volunteers came every week to care for the memorial garden for 11-year-old Carlie Brucia. Now it's neglected and vandalized.
I was horrified. I couldn't believe that it looked so bad.
The dying garden marks a deadly spot. This surveillance video from 2004 shows the last time Carlie was ever seen alive. The man in the video, Joseph Smith, was convicted of kidnapping, raping, and killing Carlie.
That is actually where her body was found, where that stone is.
Family friend Sherry Langworthy fears the memory of Carlie is dying with the garden.
Somebody vandalized this beautiful fountain.
Since Sherry learned the garden was overgrown and not being cared for, she put the word out that they needed volunteers to help fix it.
I couldn't believe that nobody showed up. Not one soul.
She and her husband, along with Carlie's cousin, have worked the last 3 weeks trying to restore the garden, but they need more help. Carlie's closest family lives hours away. That's why signs plead for visitors to water the flowers. They're asking for volunteers to come out to the garden behind Central Church of Christ in Sarasota on Saturday morning to help restore the beauty of Carlie Brucia's memory.
People need to remember.
In Sarasota, Wendy Lane, ABC Action News.
Local businesses and volunteers eventually joined the effort, helping preserve the site where the community had once gathered in shock and sorrow.
It's been 18 years since 11-year-old Carlie Brucia was kidnapped and murdered in Sarasota. Keeping her memory alive has now become a special cause for a group of students and their instructor. As Fox 13's Kimberly Quizan reports, the class is working to restore an old garden dedicated to the young girl.
At Suncoast Technical College, Rob Wolf can teach you all the skills to complete a plumbing job.
We put pipe together in a lab.
In his Sarasota classroom, students also learn life lessons.
It's all about having that empathy, that sympathy for others.
Rob is a Sarasota native, and when someone reached out from McIntosh Middle School asking him to weld a butterfly bat together for their garden, he said yes. But he was in for a lot more than that.
Just looking at the condition of the place, having 4 children of my own, it was something that kind of got into my heart that we needed to do.
The garden was dedicated 17 years ago in memory of Carlie Brucia. At 11 years old, Carlie was abducted and murdered. Her story captured the attention of the country and now Rob's class.
So we thought it would be a good project to honor Carlie.
Many hands make light work, but it's rough because everyone can only do a certain amount of things. We're all over. It's a big spot.
For the past 4 months, they've repiped, re-irrigated, and are replanting and remulching the garden.
We're happy to try and bring this back to where it was originally. It's very important in all of our hearts.
They've had some donations and have also spent money out of pocket. They hope to finish the garden by May.
It's important to pass on her legacy and let people know what happened.
Carlie lost her life 18 years ago. Rob and his class want to make sure she is never forgotten.
Some of these students that I have weren't even born when this all happened. Even though a bad thing happened, we can do good by keeping her memory alive.
In Sarasota, Kimberly Quizan, Fox 13 News.
Well, the students are in need of extra mulch and plants to get the job done, and that'll cost several more $1,000s. They hope to finish before the end of the school year, then have a rededication ceremony with those who originally planted that garden.
The impact of Carlie's murder was deep and lasting. It changed how families thought about everyday routines. It influenced conversations about probation, supervision, and child safety. It left an imprint on law enforcement officers who had worked the case, many of whom later said they would never forget those days. For her mother, Susan Shorpen, life was never the same. Years after the trial and appeals, news broke that Susan had passed away at the age of 47. Those who knew her described her as devoted to her daughter's memory. Pastor Rod Myers of the Central Church of Christ recalled standing with Susan and law enforcement near the site where Carlie had been found, praying together in the aftermath. It was, he said, a moment of shared grief and resolve.
We're learning that Susan Shorpen has passed away. Shorpen is the mother of Carlie Brucia, the 11-year-old girl whose murder made national headlines in 2004. ABC 7's Rick Adams is joining us live from Carlie's garden near the Central Church of Christ in Sarasota with more tonight. Rick.
Yeah, Haley, over the years, a lot of folks have been saddened by Carlie's death. Tonight, they are all grieving for her mom.
Susan was I believe, very dedicated mother, and she loved her daughter very much.
That's how Pastor Rod Myers of the Central Church of Christ is remembering Susan Shorpen. Shorpen, the mother of murdered 11-year-old Carlie Brucia, died on Monday at the age of 47. Myers remembers one encounter with Shorpen very vividly.
Susan and I and Sheriff Balkwell at the time all came out, and we had a prayer near where Carlie was found, and that was a very meaningful time to me to stand there with them.
Shorpen was thrust into the national headlines in 2004 when her daughter Carlie went missing while walking home from a friend's house. Police released security video from a car wash on Bee Ridge Road in Sarasota, which had shown her abduction. Authorities say she was raped and her body was found 4 days later in a wooded area next to Central Church of Christ on Proctor Road. It's an area that has been transformed into a memorial for Carlie and others.
We did not want this area to be remembered for something tragic. We wanted to turn it into something positive. And so the best way to do that was to beautify this area.
Carlie's garden here has become a spot for people to always remember Carlie. There are folks who now believe that Carlie and her mom Susan are back together again. The home belonging to Nelson Mass sits not very far from where Carlie's body was found. He had just gotten home from work when we told him the news of Susan Shorpen's death.
It's sad just to hear another devastating thing happen to the family again. But then again, now they're back together.
Shorpen had been arrested numerous times over the years for drugs and prostitution, but people who knew her say that can be attributed to the overwhelming grief she was feeling with losing her daughter. Carlie's killer, Joseph Smith, currently sits on death row. Shorpen's ex-husband did not want to comment. And Shorpen's cause of death has yet to be determined. Foul play is not suspected. Reporting live from Sarasota, I'm Rick Adams. Haley, back to you.
Carlie Brucia was only 11 years old. She had plans, favorite songs, school activities, friends she laughed with in hallways. She greeted people with hugs. She talked about the future as if it were something bright and guaranteed. Her life ended in violence, but those who loved her continued to speak about who she was before that day. A child full of warmth, curiosity, and light. Her father, Joe Brucia, has said that within their family, Carlie is not spoken of in the past tense alone. Her photographs remain throughout the house. Her name comes up in conversation naturally, as part of daily life. In that way, she is still present, in memory, in stories, in the determination to protect other children. The legal battles may have stretched across years. Appeals may have risen and fallen. But at the center of it all was a little girl walking home on an ordinary evening. And in Sarasota, there is still a place where people stop, reflect, and remember.